Now, some people are saying that Maine GOP is divided. Is that true? No! Let's show them what unity looks like. Please stand if you believe in and will fight for your country. Please stand if you believe in and will defend the Constitution. Please stand if you believe that your rights, our rights, come from God, and that the Constitution guards and protects and says that it will restrain the government, not the people. This doesn't look like division to me. I see unity and I smell victory. There are a couple of different reasons why we shouldn't have much government. Why we should have minimal government. I call one the liberty argument. It's not original to me. Some may say it starts with Thomas Paine. Thomas Paine said that government's a necessary evil. That sounds kind of harsh, but the truth of the matter is, for every ounce of government you get, you give up an ounce of freedom. Doesn't mean we shouldn't have government. It's not an argument against government, but it is an argument for minimizing government and maximizing your liberty. There's also an efficiency argument for government. Milton Friedman wrote that nobody spends somebody else's money as wisely as they spend their own. This is an argument for giving up very little money. One way of looking at it, when you think about government doing things is, and you think, well, gosh, what does government do? Well, you think, you know, is government inherently stupid?
Yeah.
Maybe not, but it's not that they're inherently stupid, but it's a debatable point, okay? Well, when I think of stupid things that government does, and I think of people, elected officials, trying to prevent stupid things, trying to ferret them out, and trying to make government less wasteful, I think of your senator, Senator Susan Collins. When I was first elected in 2010, I got there and I discovered one of the first meetings she was talking about the Energy Star program, and so she suspected they were doing something incorrect, that there was trouble in the Energy Star program, it's this energy efficiency thing, so she instituted an investigation. And she had fake devices sent over, and I brought a couple with me to show you. We have a gasoline-powered alarm clock, and we have an air purifier. It's a duster taped to a space heater, okay? Now you would think when you get these, thank you, when you see these you think, my goodness, that's a joke, right? These were sent to the Department of Energy, and guess what? They were approved. This is what's going on in your government. This is an argument for minimizing what you let government do. Well, we've got a real problem in Washington. Some of it's not getting better. Some days I'm encouraged, and other days I'm just completely at wit's end by what's going on in Washington. You know, we went through a shutdown of government. Whether it was or wasn't the right thing to do, we had it. It was shut down. But here's the thing. There's good news and bad news that came out. The good news is, yeah, your government's back open. But the bad news is your government's back open. Your government's open and nothing changed. We're borrowing over $1 million every minute. Over $1 million borrowed every minute. It just goes on and on and on. And when the government was shut down, you think, well, maybe we learned some lessons. We had a notice sent to us, a notice sent to our office, and it said, declare which of your employees are essential and unessential. Sounds like we might be able to learn something here. EPA got this notice. 95% of their employees were declared unessential. And I thought to myself, certainly there's a learning curve here. Certainly we're going to learn something from this. But like everything else in government, there's a not-so-silver lining. Turns out that if you're declared unessential, you don't have to show up for work, but you do get paid. So So we didn't save a nickel. We probably spent more money shutting the government down and opening it back up again. Only the government could be closed and spend more money than when they're open. But when they shut down the government, they were coming through this list, and somebody actually did something extraordinary. They looked at the people who worked at the EPA, and lo and behold, they found some guy named Jonathan Beale. And they said, well, this is interesting. He makes over $150,000 a year, but he hasn't been to work in the last 3 weeks. In fact, he hadn't been to work most of the last 6 months. So they did something really extraordinary. They called his supervisor at the EPA, and they said, what about this guy? He never shows up, but every performance review, he gets a bonus. He's been given bonuses. They say he's the right-hand man to Gina McCarthy. And it's like, why does he keep getting bonuses? They said, oh, there's an explanation. He works for the CIA. It's like, really? He works for the EPA and the CIA? I said, yeah. And so they did something really extraordinary. They actually called the CIA. And guess what? He's never worked for the CIA. For 11 years, he's been telling his boss that he works for the CIA, can't come in. So I'm imagining Jonathan Beale laying by the pool in his chaise lounge, drinking a beer, and his boss calls. And what does he say? Can't come in. I'm in Istanbul on secret mission, secret assignment. There's millions of government employees. In fact, I learned during the shutdown that there's 100,000 federal employees that make over $100,000 a year. And they were all declared unessential. So you got 100,000 people making $100,000 a year declared unessential. During the shutdown, though, you thought, well, maybe we'd have this debate about what government should do. But you have to realize the government didn't really shut down. 2/3 of your government is on autopilot. Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid are 2/3 of the budget. We don't vote on them. We should, but we don't vote on them. We should try to fix them. We should try to preserve them for the next generation, but we don't even pay any attention to them. They go on. They're on autopilot. That's 2/3 of your government. The remaining 1/3 of your government is what we vote on. Half of it's military, national defense, and the other half is stuff. So anyway, we decided and did the correct thing. We decided you can't have soldiers around the world not pay them. You can't not pay for your national defense, so we opened the military. We opened the national defense. That's 1/2 of a third. So now, there's only 1/2 of a third closed, 1/6 of the government. And the president thought, what if the government were closed and no one noticed? Wouldn't that be terrible if no one noticed? So the president blockaded the World War II monument. There is no entrance or exit to the World War II monument. There is no attendant to the World War II monument. There is no cost to keeping it open other than maybe mowing the grass. It was paid for with private donations. So what did he do? He hired hundreds of workers, who I guess must have been essential. He had them work overtime to wrap the World War II monument with barricades. But if you want to remember one image of the government being shut down, remember this image. The World War II veterans cutting the barricades, putting them on the bus. Sometimes I think, well, maybe we're going to wake up. Maybe if you just point out some of the gross malfeasance, the waste, the ridiculous gasoline-powered alarm clock, people will wake up and cut some spending. I try to shame them into at least thinking about it. We spent $500,000 last year developing a menu for Mars. If you have a 26-year-old child who still lives in your basement and you'd like to get him a job, it's the perfect job. $5,000 stipend, all expenses paid. The study was in Hawaii. Now the prerequisites for being in the study were very, very stringent. You had to like food. So they paid these kids $5,000 a piece, sent them to Hawaii for 2 weeks, bunch of college kids. You know what they came up with? Pizza. We spent over $100,000 last year in the NASA budget developing a 3D printer for pizza. I'm thinking maybe they're taking the printer with them on the spaceship when they go to Mars. I don't know. The waste goes on and on from top to bottom. But finally, about 4 months ago, we had a vote. This vote was in the House of Representatives, and I thought, you know what? Really, when you have a vote like this will separate really those who are truly serious about this problem. The vote was for only $3 million, and often the argument you'll hear in Washington is, oh, it's only $3 million bucks. You cut $3 million bucks, you won't do anything. And it's like, hell, we got to start somewhere. The water skiing squirrel. Now, I like dumb pet tricks, and if you email me one, I'll watch it, okay? But taxpayers paying $3 million for a water skiing squirrel doesn't seem appropriate to me. We have a program to market American walnuts in Spain, and Twiggy the water skiing squirrel is the promoter of these walnuts being sold in Spain. Now look, if you have a walnut farm, I'm all for you, but it's not the taxpayer's business to promote your farm, all right? So we had this vote in the House, and you realize we control the House. By 20 or 30 votes, Republicans control the House. We had a vote on cutting $3 million from Twiggy the water skiing squirrel, and we lost. We lost overwhelmingly. The vote was 320 to keep the squirrel, 90 to get rid of the squirrel. Over half the Republicans voted to keep the squirrel. Some Democrats voted and said, you know what? Some of the ones who actually opposed it said it wasn't enough. They wanted more for the squirrel. But here's the point, and it isn't so much about the program or the $3 million. It's about, if you can't have the courage to cut $3 million, how are you ever going to tackle the difficulties, the entitlement, Social Security, So we need more courage. We need more people to stand up and say enough's enough. Because there is something that could happen. There are repercussions. You cannot spend beyond your means $1 trillion a year and expect that there will not ultimately be repercussions. There are repercussions now. People say your kids and grandkids will inherit this. It's worse than that. We're already inheriting this debt. Some economists estimate that it's 1 million jobs a year that are being lost. So we already are in the midst of this, and there is always the danger that it gets worse, that we destroy the currency in the process of this. We have to get a grip on this. And this isn't like eliminating Social Security or getting rid of Medicare. It's just saying, look, we're living longer. A bunch of people were born after the war, and then less people were born in the next generation and the next generation. People say, whose fault is it? Is it Republicans' fault for messing up Social Security or Democrats? I say, no, it's your grandparents for having too many damn kids. It's just a demographic fact. We had a bunch of people born after the war, and we're all living longer. None of these are bad things. We just have to adjust the age at which we retire. Not for those who are already retired. We don't even have to cut benefits for anybody, but gradually start raising the age of eligibility. People say, oh, you can't talk about that. But we have to talk about it. If we don't talk about it, we're in for a real mess. When I first got to Washington, I met with the Republican caucus, with the president across from me and Biden sitting next to me, and I said to the president, all we have to do is fix this. It's an actuarial problem. If you work with us, and we do it gradually, it won't be very painful, and you'll be seen as a hero for doing the right thing and working with Republicans, and it's a bipartisan thing. We'll get it done. And he nodded his head, and it sounded reasonable. And next week they came out with the ad showing Grandma going off a cliff. Republicans pushing Grandma off a cliff in a wheelchair. Because that's what it's about, is demagoguery. When's it going to come a time when the population finally wakes up and says, we want somebody to tell us the truth and do what it takes to fix these problems? There have been a lot of scandals during this administration, but the one that really probably bothers me the most is Benghazi. For 6 months leading up to this, see, all the talk has been about the talking points, and something was nefarious going on with the talking points, don't get me wrong, but I think we've distracted ourselves from the fact that for 6 months, Hillary Clinton was asked for extra security. She was asked for reinforcements. She was asked, and it was denied. I asked her point blank. She came before my committee, and I said, Secretary Clinton, did you read the cables from Ambassador Stevens? And she said no, she was pretty busy. Who's too busy to read the cables from one of the most dangerous countries on earth? 6 months in advance, they asked for a plane to fly around Libya or to escape. Denied by Hillary Clinton and the State Department. This became a real problem. The night of the attack, we were trying to get people from Tripoli. We spent an hour jawing with the Libyans. We finally got some reinforcements sent. We had 4 more special troops sitting there waiting to come. Colonel Gibson wants to get on the plane. They're having to haggle with the Libyan Air Force. That's an American plane that we probably bought for them. And we're having to beg for permission to get on the plane because Hillary Clinton wouldn't allow them to have a DC-3, a 50-year-old plane in the country. Meanwhile, the day after the plane was denied, stamp approved, Hillary Clinton approved $100,000 for Let's Go Green at the embassy in Vienna, an electrical charging station for the ambassador's pet project, his electrical car fleet. So we spent $100,000 in Vienna that we didn't have enough money for a plane. The same summer, we spent another $100,000 in the State Department sending 3 comedians to India on the Make Chai Not War tour. Tell me where that's part of the essential mission of the State Department. That summer, Hillary Clinton also approved $650,000 for Facebook ads to try to get more friends for her Facebook. They spent $700,000 of State Department money landscaping the embassy in Brussels. They spent $5 million on new crystal glassware for the State Department. But when in August Colonel Wood said we need to keep this 16-member team, this 16-member security team in Libya, denied. She claims no knowledge of this, but that's my point. You're either derelict of your duty for not watching what's going on in Libya, or you're derelict of your duty for actually denying it. Either way. Either way, there's one thing that we will not tolerate. There's one thing that Americans will not stomach, and that's a commander-in-chief who won't send reinforcements. I think Hillary Clinton, by her behavior in Benghazi, precludes herself from ever holding high office. You may have noticed we don't always win. Republicans are not always winning around the country. Happens sometimes in Maine, I've been told. You are winning some great races. Senator Collins, I tell her, we need to figure out she's 80% popular in Maine. You are winning. You've got a Republican governor. Yeah. You have some good state legislators, but not enough of them. But we have to figure out how we're going to win nationally again. It means we have to have a bigger party. It has to be a more welcoming party. It has to look more like America. So I tell people it's got to have with tattoos and without tattoos. With earrings and without earrings. With ponytails and without ponytails. Working class and business class. We cannot be the party of corporate welfare. We cannot be the party. When you're saying, because of limited resources, we can't give free stuff to everybody, the first people that should have their free stuff cut off are the big corporations. We give over $20 billion in direct welfare to big corporations. The top 100, Fortune's 100 companies, get an average of $200 million apiece from the taxpayer. How can we, as Republicans, with a straight face, say that we have to cut in a lot of places that are sensitive to people if we're not willing to cut off the corporations first? We also give billions of dollars of loans. Department of Energy loans, you say, oh, we have to just promote business. Well, you know who gets the loans? Contributors get the loans. So President Obama, the $20 billion that he distributed, you remember Solyndra? The $20 billion he distributed to the Department of Energy loans, 80% went to big bundlers and people who raised millions of dollars for him. It should all end, and it should be the first thing on the chopping block. If we want a bigger party, we have to show concern for those who aren't doing very well. The long-term unemployed, the unemployed, those who live in poverty, those who live in big cities. We have to broaden our message to more people. And if we say, well, gosh, you know, we want more African Americans in our party, more Hispanics, more Jewish Americans, Asian Americans, we have to realize that there have been times in our history when we haven't treated these people well. Not Republicans, but the government in general. We have to realize how people are fully aware that government hasn't always been just. There are still episodes of this. We passed something in the last couple of years called indefinite detention. An American citizen can be detained in our country without a trial. And I asked the senator I was debating, it was another Republican senator, I said, do you mean that you could send an American citizen to Guantanamo Bay without a trial, without a lawyer, without a jury trial? And he said, yeah, if they're dangerous. I said, sort of begs the question, doesn't it? Who gets to decide? And here's the rub. Who is someone who might be associated with terrorism? They put out bulletins on this. Anybody has more than 7 days of food in their house? That'd be half the state of Utah and this gentleman right here. Multiple guns in the house. Weatherized, I'm not going to ask for a show of hands on that. Weatherized ammunition. I mean, stains on your clothing. Recently changed the color of your hair. I'm not going to ask for a show of hands on that one. But the thing is that the definition of who you're supposed to be suspicious of, wouldn't you want your day in court? But just think also, if you're an Arab American and your ancestors or cousins live in Lebanon, you send emails to your cousin. Turns out maybe somebody thinks your cousin is a terrorist. Wouldn't you still want the Lebanese American to get their day in court in our country to prove whether or not? I try to think of it this way. You remember Richard Jewell? Everybody thought he was the Olympic bomber. He fit the profile. He was kind of introverted. He had a backpack and he looked suspicious. And on TV they convicted him within hours. The only problem was he didn't do it. But think if Richard Jewell had been a black man in the South in 1920. That's why you have to have a lawyer. That's why you have to have due process. That's why we have to believe. You know, when we say, well, for the Second Amendment, that's great. But we have to be for the Fourth Amendment, and the Fifth Amendment, and the Sixth Amendment. I think if we are, the door will crack open and people will begin to listen to our message again. For those who are living in poverty, we need a specific message for them. I went to Detroit 3 months ago and I said to the people in Detroit that I would help them. Not by bringing your money, not by bringing money from Kentucky, but by leaving their own money in Detroit. We're proposing something called economic freedom zones. If you live in an area of high unemployment, we'll dramatically lower your taxes. So much so that in Detroit, it would be a $1.3 billion stimulus. We need to get away from letting the Democrats say, we care about everybody. They may care, but you know my definition of a liberal, big heart and small brain. We need to show people, the unemployed, those who are hurting, we need to show them that we do care, and that it's just that our policies are different. But we've had 50 years of the Democrats running the big cities and running them into the ground. So I think it's time that we move forward, show compassion, show that we care, and bring something for the big cities in this country. As far as how we do this, I say do it with a smile. We've got to have optimism. We've got to bring a happy message to people, and it can't be the scowling, mean old Republicans that some people perceive us as being. I like to think of our message like a message that Robert Henry told to young painters. He said, paint like a man coming over the hill singing. I love the image of that. We need to proclaim our message like Patrick Henry, with the passion of Patrick Henry, but with the optimism of a painter coming over the hill singing, a young man coming over the hill singing. When we proclaim our message like a man coming over the hill singing, then we'll be the dominant party again. Thank you very much.
Senator Paul, and I've got to say that I know you're going back with some lobsters, good Maine lobsters going to Bowling Green, just to so that you can practice handling them. We thought we'd bring this one up. As long as it has a band on these things, you can touch them and everything. It's perfectly fine. Thank you so much.